Perfect. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks for joining this Hampshire Head Teachers webinar. Really appreciate your time. Know how busy you all are. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Just gonna make sure we've got everyone coming in.
I can let people in, Claire.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you, Susie. Great. So, hello, my name is Claire Fernie-Huff, and we are joined by three amazing head teachers who are all going to be on the panel for today as well. But before we hand over to them, I'm going to just do a little intro, and then I'm going to hand to Louise Milne, who is our Hampshire paediatrician, who's going to talk about what she's seeing in her clinic at the moment and why this is relevant. So just very, very briefly, just to kind of frame what this is all about. My name is Claire. I co-founded the Smartphone Free Childhood movement just over 2 years ago. I've got a daughter who's in year 6, so we'll be starting secondary next year. And I did it really for her because I could just see that actually there's really stuff going wrong with children and smartphones at the moment. More recently, I have founded a schools-based campaign called Generation Focus, which is specifically about getting phones out of schools and supporting primarily brick phone policies, and we will explain why in a minute. But I come to this with a perspective as a parent, really, of protecting the school day, but also reclaiming childhood. And everyone here knows that smartphones are disastrous for learning, for adults as well, actually, but also, mainly for children. But really, this is about not just learning, this is about childhood and what parents and educators can do to take the burden off our kids, both at school and at home. It feels like we're currently in a collective action trap. We've walked into a situation, and parents, as I'm sure you're seeing, are really, really struggling with this issue. And they can't do it on their own, and they need support, and we need the schools and parents to work together more. What we've seen in the last 2 years in our work is that when schools move to brick phone policies, as we call them, either just for year 7 or year 7 to 11, things really change, not only for learning and the school day, but also for the wider childhood piece as well. Because solving the school day is kind of only half the problem for children. Because if children are addicted, their homework suffers, their sleep suffers, their well-being suffers, as we all know. So we've seen that when schools ban phones completely, the norm really, really shifts well beyond the school gate. We feel that there should be a statutory ban, and we were campaigning very, very hard for the amendment last night to get through. It was not supported, as we know, but we feel like this generation of kids just can't afford to wait any longer. The situation has got so bad. So just a quick one on the new guidance that just recently has come through from DfE. It is stronger than it was before. It expects schools to implement a policy whereby pupils do not have access to their mobile phone during the school day. So it gives, hopefully, well, I think it was designed to give head teachers more, feeling like they've got more clout to go bigger. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit more as well. So today we're going to hear from 3 head teachers who've completely banned phones from their sites, either just from year 7 or year 7-8, or all the way through to year 11. So they're here to answer questions on how they did it, how they overcame challenges and barriers, and we would like to propose a solution that actually other schools potentially follow what they've done, because we feel that actually when schools all act together, it's just so much easier for everybody. But before we get to that, I'm going to hand over to Louise Milne, who is a paediatrician, to talk about what she is seeing and why it's relevant to childhood and to schools as well. So over to you.
Thank you, Claire. Right, I'll just share my screen. So Claire, can you see?
Yes, all good.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm not going to waste too much time explaining who I am and my credentials. I'm a consultant paediatrician. I work at a very busy DGH, Portsmouth, Queen Alexandra Hospital. And I have tried to whittle down an hour presentation to the real key points for you guys today, the things that affect kids within the school environment. I come with a trigger warning. My trigger warning is that I'm going to talk about some graphic and difficult things that are quite difficult to hear, and especially in the context of being a parent yourself and some of the decisions that you may have made along your own journey. And I just want to say at this point in time, I think our own parenting decisions are probably the biggest thing that influences how we then go on to look after kids within our own professional worlds. But actually, at this point in time, I think we need to just park that to one side and have a little think about what our kind of moral duty here as professionals is with looking after kids. So what is the issue with smartphones in schools? And it's quite simple, really. The biggest issue for you guys is that they are a safeguarding risk. And they're a safeguarding risk in a kid's bag throughout the day. They're a safeguarding risk if they're put into a pouch that a kid can easily access. And they're a safeguarding risk on the bus into and out of school, on a school trip or on a residential. And the reason that they're a safeguarding risk is because they're mini supercomputers that sit in a child's pocket and give them access to the internet 24 hours a day. But that also means that the internet has access to them 24 hours a day. And so they can contact people and people can contact them. And so you get the cyberbullying, the grooming and sextortion. They're able to access harmful or age inappropriate content. And we know that they're displacing real life activities, the things they should be doing. They're using that time instead to be online. And that has a huge impact on their mental health and their well-being. So I've spent a lot of time speaking to parents and speaking to medics and other health professionals and also teachers. And this is one of the comments that comes along now and again. And I'm just going to take this opportunity really to challenge that concept that it's not a problem within my school. And the way I want to challenge that is by having a little think about those children that we see coming into school for their school day, and think about imagining them having a mirror world. So each of these children that has a smartphone has another world that they exist within. And this world, they spend about a quarter of their waking hours within this world, so 29 hours a week on average. And within this world, there's no proud head teacher that stands there upholding the values of their community. There's no community looking out for them, and there's no loving parents looking over them and watching them. In this mirror world, people are out to get them. They are perpetrators. There are drug dealers. There is violent material. There is pornography on access to them. And we don't know what's happening within this world as adults. We can't see that world. The only way we have access to that world is through the child. And now and again, there's a little split in the dimensions of the two worlds, and there's a leakage of information from that mirror world that these children live in, this virtual world, into the real world. And you guys see that as those safeguarding referrals that you have to make. And that's the only way we can access it, the only way we can see it. And so my challenge to you is to start asking kids what they're seeing, what they're doing, and what this world is like. And I've started doing that. I've started doing that with the children that come in emergencies to our hospital and the children that I see within the clinic environment. And these are the things that I hear. And it's not always related to why they're with us, but it's really interesting, and the parents find it quite tricky too. So I've met children who've been bullied on WhatsApp groups. So there's the polling facility on WhatsApp. Who's the ugliest child? Who's the least popular? Happening in 12-year-olds. I had a child who had a seizure. She was performing a TikTok challenge. No one had actually asked her. She was very lucky actually to survive that one. She was 14. I've had children who've been groomed on Snapchat, which has led to eating disorders. 13-year-old for that one. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a child who microwaved a squishy toy. This is her latest TikTok challenge. She opened the microwave and hot lava liquid burnt all down her face and neck. She was 11. Sharing intimate images with strangers, 15. We had a very sad day where a 14-year-old died from cyberbullying in Portsmouth. Children added to large WhatsApp groups with paedophiles, age 12. Behavioural issues. We have a lot of child abandonment now. So this is kind of a new concept. These are children that don't have mental health conditions. So they're not under the CAM services at all, but the behaviour is so difficult that the families can't manage them. So they bring them into hospital and they leave them there. And I was chatting with one of these children with these behavioural issues. She had 6 Snapchat accounts, and she was able to show me how she could contact drug dealers and easily get hold of drugs. She was 12. And I've had children who've been shown traumatic videos on school buses at age 13. So it's definitely a problem. These are the children of Hampshire. They are everywhere. And I speak to other medics and they're seeing the same sort of things. And this is some quotes from the Ofsted report in 2021 that looked at sexual abuse in schools and colleges. And it said that professionals consistently underestimate the prevalence of online sexual abuse, and that school leaders should assume that sexual harassment and online sexual abuse is happening in their setting, even when there's no specific reports, and put in place a whole school approach to address them. I think it's really important that we realise that this world, we can't see it, and we have to ask the children in order to access it. So this report was quite useful. It has lots of really interesting data on it, and I won't go into lots of detail, but what it's showing is that girls are typically more affected by sexual abuse than boys. And these graphs are showing about the sharing of sexual images within the school environment. But we can also see that the police are now telling us that children are now the biggest perpetrators of sexual abuse against children. So children are more likely to be sexually abused in person by a peer than they are by an adult. And it's concerning that for some children, incidents are so commonplace that they see no point in reporting them. So a huge problem that's being underreported, which leads us on to child sexual abuse online. So the Internet Watch Foundation in 2024 showed data that 91% of the images of child sexual abuse found online were self-generated. So these are images that mean that a child has internet access and a front-facing camera. And if we took away even one of those factors, we'd be able to reduce the risk of that self-generated material. And we're seeing an increasing trend in the 7 to 10-year-olds, which mirrors the increasing trend of smartphone devices within that age group, and a huge increase in AI-generated child sexual abuse. And then moving to sex extortion. So this is financially motivated child sexual abuse. And it's worth mentioning really because of the impact on the secondary age group. So organised crime groups from outside the UK, they target particularly the 14 to 18-year-old boys in the UK because we have so little protection of them. And they're very quick from contact to blackmail. It's definitely been linked to child death. Affects the boys more than the girls. But again, we're beginning to see reports in younger age groups as those devices move into those age groups as well. And what are they looking at? So we talked about the content right at the beginning be one of the things that we worry about. We know that 51% of the UK 11 to 13-year-olds have seen hardcore pornography online. And we bring your attention to the term hardcore. That's particularly violent and misogynistic pornography. And we know that's having an impact on their first sexual encounter and the way that they view relationships as young adults. Nearly 60% of those have seen it by accident. So they didn't go looking for it. They've been shown it. 75% of 15-year-olds questioned by the Children's Commissioner had seen a beheading video. And 70% of 13 to 17-year-olds have seen violence on social media in the last 12 months. And we know if they watch violence, then 68% of them don't want to go out anymore. They don't believe it's a safe world that they live in. And 39% are more likely to carry a weapon. And we can bring that really up to date. We can think about the Charlie Kirk video, that murder was shown and shared on social media within minutes of it happening in America. And we know that lots of schools had to make responses related to that in order to warn parents about what their kids were likely to see on their WhatsApp groups. And these two brave teenagers are coming out. They are the minority, which are representing a huge majority of children who have been exposed throughout the school day to pornography and violent graphic materials. Both of these children watched people lose their lives by being shot, and it affected them greatly going forwards. So I'm not going to labour the point. We all know that there's a mental health crisis in kids. This is the data from QA. It shows that there's been a 600% rise from 2005 to 2025 in children that are being discharged from hospital with a mental health diagnosis. Not a surprise. It's mirrored across the country, nationally on data, and actually a lot of the westernised countries are showing similar patterns. And two things I just want to point out. One is that the data began to rise, so the incidence of mental health problems in children really took off in 2010, which mirrors when children began to carry smartphones, and that this wasn't a COVID issue. So this line, the black line, shows when COVID happened, and it was not COVID that caused this problem. It obviously didn't help it, but it was already an issue before that. And there's tons of data that can link your mental health to screen time, to social media, to devices. And this is data going back to 2017 that shows that teens using devices more than 5 hours a day are 70% more likely to exhibit a risk factor for suicide. So lots of data. It is correlation. I can't tell you it's a cause and effect, but when you think about mental health, it's multifactorial. And if this is a modifiable risk factor, owning and using a smartphone and accessing social media, then we should absolutely be doing everything we can to modify it. And then Claire alluded to the impact on learning. I think we can all understand this, but I'm just going to go through it quickly, especially the neurodiversity side of things. So I think it's quite hard nowadays to find someone who's not seeking a neurodiverse diagnosis for their child. It's extremely popular. There's lots of people who are worried about their kids' behaviour. And what we're finding is that children that spend more than 2 hours a day on screen time have a 7.7% times increase risk of ADHD behaviours. So children who are neurodiverse have an increase in their behaviours, but it's also mimicking those neurodiverse behaviours. So psychiatrists are now diagnosing children with acquired ADHD from their screen time use. We know they're a huge distraction. We know it ourselves as adults. 237 notifications a day. We think that's an underestimate. We know the story of the primary school teacher who found a smartphone device, put it away overnight, came back the next day to 4,000 notifications. So we know that this is a huge problem. And every time you're notified and distracted from what you're doing, it takes on average 23 minutes to refocus. And that's a really reproducible study that's been done lots of times. And it's between 20 and 25 minutes. And I think this is something as adults we can also appreciate. The mere presence of a smartphone in the same environment as you reduces your cognitive capacity. Again, brilliant studies, very easily reproducible. It needs to be completely away from you in order to make it a level playing field and to reduce that impact. And we know that the exam results are better in schools that completely remove smartphones from their environments. And the most important thing to highlight from this is that the lower achieving students are the ones that benefit the most from that environment change. And really, just to reassure you that data coming out of New Zealand now is showing us that it doesn't matter if you don't have as much access to screens and smartphones and the digital environment as a child. It actually shows that you improve your digital literacy by the age of 12 years, your critical thinking and your ability to understand how to use it. So I'm going to come to an end there. Thank you for your time. I've got loads more data and information if anyone is ever interested, and I'm very happy to be contacted. I just want to end you with this thought that we can't really change how we've got here as a society. This is where we are, and we can't go back and change that, but we certainly can be the people that put a stop on it right now and change where the future goes from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. So I just wanted to share a few ideas as well. If I can find my mouse, hang on. Apologies. Okay. So this is not head teacher's fault. It shouldn't really be up to you to to be wading in and changing a societal norm. We know that. But, and we saw government voting last night on trying to get a statutory ban. We believe there should be a statutory ban. But at the moment, there doesn't seem to be appetite for that. And it does leave a lot on head teachers. But, it feels like it is down to parents and schools at the moment. I just wanted to share a few stats from some brand new polling that we have just done that was just released yesterday. It was in the Times yesterday. We polled 16 to 18-year-olds. We found that 40% of them had been shown upsetting content on their phone or on another child's phone during the school day. And we found that 28% of them had been filmed against their wishes at school. And we found that 31% of them believe they would have got better GCSE grades if smartphones had not been allowed to be brought into their school. So, brand new data there, and I think it really kind of, hits home. So from our perspective, from a parent's perspective, what I've seen again and again and again is that if you delay and you do the brave thing as a parent and you delay giving a smartphone, and then your child goes to secondary school and everybody else is allowed a smartphone, even if it is locked away in a locker, it's very, very, very hard to stand firm. And even the strongest parents are really struggling to do that. And that's why I think it's very interesting to hear from Mark, Leanne and Toby today, to hear about actually just let's get rid of those phones completely. It's the only way that actually parents can then go, you know what, you're not allowed it at school. You can have a brick phone. A brick phone can call and text very powerfully. And, that's all you need as a communication device. One thing to say on, we're hearing a lot about pouches and lockers, and some schools have gone to Yonder pouches, and I think they can be a great interim solution when phones are kind of being phased out, and they can be very powerful and they protect the school day. They are very expensive, and they don't necessarily do that. They don't change anything beyond 4 p.m. necessarily. I think the point we want to make really is that smartphone-free schools, truly smartphone-free schools, can actually really unlock smartphone-free childhoods. The question I would like to pose before we go into the panel discussion is, would you consider, if other schools all did the same, prohibiting smartphones for year sevens, ideally from September. If everybody did it together across Hampshire and said, look, let's just do this as a county-wide policy, would that be something you would consider? So before we think more of that, I would love to hand over to the panel now. So Toby, if we come to you first, Toby is actually from St Peter's School across the border in Surrey, and you banned phones from years 7 to 11, didn't you? I would love to hear why you did it, what led you to doing it, and the impact that you've seen. Really be interesting to hear. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Claire. Good afternoon, everyone. Really good to have the opportunity to speak to you. And I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes just outlining when we started this and what the impact has been and how we went about it. So it's really started for us, before we start, at St Peter's Catholic School in Guildford. It's a school of 1,350 with a sixth form. We started this journey actually almost 2 years to the date to now. I think it was March 24. We started thinking about this, and 2 or 3 things happened which prompted us to start on this journey. The first was that I started to hear about smartphone-free childhood as a movement and as an idea, and that it was very much sort of parent-led and driven, and that was gaining traction. The second was I read, like thousands of other people, Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, which since then some scientists have cast doubt on some of the aspects of it and the processes, but I think the fundamental principles that were in that are as true now as they were when it came out. And if you look at the data from 2012 onwards about when smartphones were introduced to the world and the impact around children's mental health and all of those implications, I think there's an awful lot there that is definitely very credible. So read that and really opened our eyes to some of these issues. And then the third thing was that we've got some of our staff are also parents in some of the local primary schools. They were coming through in years 4, 5 and 6, and at the stage where their children were saying to them, right, well, we're going to secondary school now, so we get a smartphone, like lots of children did and lots of parents do. And they wanted to know from us as a secondary school, do they really need a smartphone when they come to secondary school for learning or for anything else for that matter? They wanted to know that if they were decided to say no to their children, that we wouldn't be contradicting that by saying, yeah, they need a smartphone for learning and so on. And I was able to respond to them, yeah, we don't, absolutely, they don't need a smartphone to come to school. They don't need it for learning. They don't need it for any aspect of school life. We were at that time, 2 or 3 years ago, allowing teachers occasionally to use it if they wanted to do a quiz, a caboodle or whatever, those things. But that's just, that's icing on the cake. It's not really actually a very credible learning tool. So we were able to say to them, right, no, you do not need smartphones in school. And then I actually started thinking, right, why do we even allow them in then in the first place? So we started looking at the possibility of banning them on site altogether, and then looked at the issues that parents might come up against around safety and around safeguarding and wanting to have contact with their children. And we're able to pretty much, like I know Claire would definitely support, about dispel any of the myths around having to have a device which allows the parents to track them, allows the communication to and from school that required a smartphone, and just built up a little sort of database of responses to all the questions which parents might have where they say, no, my child needs a smartphone. And then because we had the backing of a lot of those year kind of 6 parents that were coming to us the following year, we said, right, we're definitely going to ban them for year 7. And actually that was a bit of a sea change, because suddenly all the parents of the year 7s thought it was a complete weight off their shoulders. They felt, right, I don't need to even have a discussion now. School says you can't even have one. Secondary school says you can't even have one. So we're going to say no. And they felt really empowered to say no to their year 6 child, and their year 5 child say, right, we're not going to do it. And it started to tip the scales of the argument that parents will have of, well, my child says that everyone else has got a smartphone, so therefore I should have one. And that was really powerful. So we then thought, right, well, if we're doing it for year 7 next year, for September 24, then we might as well do it for year 8 and year 9. And we staggered it a bit. So year 7s were banned from the September, year 8 and 9 were given 1 term's grace. And then year 10 was the following year, and our current year 11 have them, but that will be gone. So by the end of this year, it'll be years 7 to 11. It'll be a complete ban on smartphones. They're allowed a brick phone, and they totally understand what the implications are of that, and the fact that it's more and more now are understanding that it's a perfectly suitable communication device. And the 2 big things are it can't access the internet, hasn't got a camera on it, which is really, really powerful. The whole tracking thing, I'm sure some of my colleagues will talk about that as well. I think that's a relatively small hurdle to overcome, the question about tracking. My view is actually that there are loads of practical solutions to that. But I think the thing we've got to push as schools is, why are we tracking our children in the first place? They have no opportunity in their lives, really, to get from school to home and actually have to get themselves out of the odd bit of a pickle, get onto the bus without being able to tell their parents they're on the bus or be tracked. And the bit about reclaiming the smartphone-free childhood through banning them through schools really appeals to us, because it allows children to have a childhood and to actually spend time together playing and doing all the great things that kids used to do without the pressure of the smartphone. And Louise has outlined all the really hideous things around smartphone and that access to social media. So I don't need to go down that, but that's the reality of it. So we've currently got the situation now where the default is they're not allowed smartphones on site. And they're allowed brick phones, but we have a confiscation policy for any phone that's found. So we still have that in place. They lose them for 2 weeks if they're confiscated. End of story. And it's starting to build up. I think in 2 or 3 years' time, it will be much more powerful, and we'll have a sort of a significant proportion of the school population where they haven't even got a smartphone outside of school, never mind not being allowed to bring them to school in the first place. And we're not naive enough to think that some children don't bring their smartphone to school and bury it in the bottom of their bag and get it out on the bus. We haven't gone down a policy of searching every child randomly, or year groups randomly. We just haven't wanted that culture. If it became a big enough issue that too many were coming in, then I would. But we have seen a significant drop in their responses to needing their phones. We've seen a significant drop in online bullying, particularly in all the WhatsApp groups. It just doesn't really become an issue, particularly in those year 7 and 8 year groups where we've had the most impact. I saw the question there about what do you do if a child refuses to hand over a phone. If they refuse to hand over their phone in our school, as far as I'm concerned, it's a refusal to follow instructions. They would get minimum of an isolation, or they'd be suspended, and then their parents would have to come in and deal with all of that, and we'd still have to get the phone off them anyway. So it still happens. I'll say one more thing, and then I'll hand over to my colleagues. The bit about consultation will be a question of consultation with parents. I think it's a thing to think about. But fundamentally, if as a school you think that children should not have a smartphone and they certainly shouldn't be in school, why are we asking parents whether for their opinion about it? We didn't consult at all. I got a really good letter together that I spent a long time putting together with a lot of the data, the information, and this was 2 years ago, the rationale, the support for the primary school parents. Spend a lot of time putting that together, and I just told parents that this is what we were going to do. Probably in a slightly easier position in that I've been the head here for 12 years, so you have a level of trust and relationship with the parents, hopefully, where you can do things like that. And I had minimal pushback, certainly in terms of communications to us. We had about 5 or 6 emails from parents who were really, really not happy about it. I've probably got a handful of parents that haven't communicated with me, that are probably sticking two fingers up at me and allowing their children to do what they want anyway. But the vast majority, particularly of the younger year groups, are really, really supportive of it. So consult, yes, but if you've already decided that that's what you want to do, that how much you're going to take notice of that consultation anyway. Giving them information about how to track their child is really key, because those will be the things that they'll ask about, even though we don't think they're actually that important.
Yeah.
Sorry, Claire.
No, that's great. Thank you, Toby. I think tracking is one that comes up most, and I think we do need to question whether it is actually mostly our own parental anxiety. But that aside, there are ways of doing it without a smartphone. Thank you so much, Toby. And we'll hand over to you, Leanne, from Ringwood. Yes, same question, really. What made you do it? How have you gone about it, and what's been the impact? Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So we're a 1600 11 to 18 school, and we're in Ringwood, and we're the kind of only school in town. So we're quite an inclusive environment, because we serve the whole of the town and then around in quite a rural area as well. Our journey started, I think, about 18 months ago, when I was just doing some analysis of suspensions, and it really struck me how many children in year 7 and year 8 I was suspending proportionally, but hardly anyone in Key Stage 4, and just so many in 7 and 8. And it really made me think about, actually, for ages I've been saying, oh, it's COVID, all of those suspensions went up after COVID, but this cannot just still be COVID. This must be something more. And lots of those suspensions were for prejudicial language. And you then start to question, what are these children seeing? What are these children thinking about? What world are they existing in? And then alongside that, obviously, are all the harms that Louise explained to us so well earlier on, those safeguarding issues that we're all coming across, those real concerns about mental health that we're all coming across. And all of these things started to come together for me. And then I watched the Emma Willis and Matt Willis Swiped programme. And if you haven't seen that, I would strongly recommend it. I think it's still on All 4. But for me, it was a total game changer. It's they link up with a school, a group of year 8s, give their phone up for 3 weeks, and all of the expected happens. They sleep better, they have better social relationships, they feel better, all of those things that we all know would happen. But there were 3 things about the programme for me which I found really impactful. And the first of those was, there was a really good demonstration of how equipped the algorithms are for sending harmful content to children within minutes. And I had never really thought about it deeply before like that. I'd assumed that if children don't go looking for it, then they're quite safe. And I'd assumed that for my own children as well. But I had not really thought about, actually, it's coming to find you. And then secondly, there were 2 case studies of children that took their own lives. Very hard to watch as a mother, I found. And actually looking at pictures of the children, I've got pictures of my own children, very similar. And it really started to make me think, there, but for the grace of God, go any of us actually at the moment. And then finally, whenever parents were spoken to, and the psychologists that were spoken to, they were all talking about us all acting together. So parents, schools and the government. And that message was over and over again. And it really made me feel like I had some agency, and I really had a moral duty to do something. So we came back to school after Christmas, not the one just gone, the one before, really thinking about wanting to do something with smartphones. And then at the beginning of that February, the University of Birmingham study came out that said that smartphone bans in school didn't really help, because children were still spending, that at that point it was saying 4 to 6 hours a day on their devices. So it made me really think about trying to help parents to have a smartphone-free childhood, and it not just being about school, but school being the gateway to help parents make that happen. And so I decided to ban smartphones for year 7 coming in. So we were at this point, we were in February. And so once National Allocation Day had happened in March, I wrote to all our new parents and said, I'm doing this. I'm calling a meeting. I want to share my evidence with you. I want to explain why I'm doing it. And you've still got time to reject your place here if you're not into it. So we went through all of that, and the parent body were really, really supportive. They worried about tracking, particularly those that had already given their children smartphones in primary school. And so we had lots of questions there. And I always just direct them to the Smartphone Free Childhood website, because there's a huge section for parents where there's lots of advice, and tracking obviously comes up. Also, psychologically, I think it's not a good thing for children, but actually just try to address the practical issues. And then parents said, we feel it's a bit late because we've already given our children smartphones, which I totally get. However, obviously, as a secondary head, you can only influence things from the moment they join you. But since then, I have done the same talk in all our feeder schools, and all our feeder schools by September will also have complete smartphone bans. So we're really now going at this as a complete sort of pyramid together. So that's been really, really impactful as well. In terms of, so I've just gone to ban year 7. That's going to roll into year 8, and new year 7 will have a smartphone ban, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with 9, 10 and 11 after the government consultation's finished. What I'd really like is a smartphone ban, but if we don't get one, then we'll need to come up with a slightly different solution, I think, because I just do not have the capacity for the pushback that we'll get if I ban them just across the entire school, because our community won't take too kindly to that, I don't think. So in terms of impact, a quarter of our year 7 students do not have smartphones at all, and that is not the situation in previous years. So it's not, it would not have happened without banning the smartphones. 60% aren't on social media at all. I've also said that I won't deal with any issues if a child is too young to be on that platform, given that most platforms are age 13. I do recognise my safeguarding responsibility, so we sort of actually will. But it's been a really strong message for parents, and it's really helped to empower parents in saying no to their children when their children are asking to be on social media. We've only got 7% of our year 7 cohort on those big WhatsApp groups that we're also very worried about. And of those, half of them say they've had unpleasant experiences. So even in that small minority group, it's still causing a problem for them, and clearly is not a good thing to do. And then when I went to parents in the autumn term to say, would you support a ban going into year 8? At that point, it was 62% of parents. But given all of the action, the increased government statements, the hope that there might be more coming, we've decided that we will just obviously go and roll that into year 8 to ban. So I think that's all my information.
That's lovely. Thank you. Thanks so much, Leanne. And I think what's so interesting is that actually the smartphone ownership has gone down so much.
Yeah.
And that's what we see. And then year on year that increases. Yeah. And then that's what the change that we all want. So that's amazing. Thank you so much, Leanne. Mark, from the Petersfield School, love to hear from you. Same questions really. Why did you do it? How did you do it, and what's been the impact?
Yes, thank you, Claire. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's really interesting to hear the kind of commonalities between all of our stories here, because lots of things are quite similar. For me, I think in terms of where I first got thinking about this was actually the documentary The Social Dilemma, which you may have seen. Really powerful. It's on Netflix. And what was really powerful for me thinking about that was it was from the people that created these platforms. It was from the kind of whistleblowers inside these social media companies, and the person who developed the like button, the person who developed the infinite scroll, and they were just sort of saying how horrified they are by what had happened. And it actually made me reflect on my own social media use, and I took some steps, and I put a little limit, only 10 minutes on Facebook a day and things like that. And that just really opened up my eyes really to if I'm struggling with this and thinking about this and more worried about what's going on with my social media use, what chance does a 11, 12-year-old child have to be able to do that? So then Jonathan Haidt's book came out, and obviously Claire, your WhatsApp group exploded, didn't it, at that time? And it all really coalesced in my mind that I wanted to just kind of do what I could do to try and avoid these problems or mitigate these problems, while the children were in our care here at the Petersfield School. So we're an 11 to 16 school in East Hampshire, 1,300 students, lots and lots of children travelling quite distances to get to us. So we have about 400 children coming up on the train every day, which I think is a factor. Got quite a lot of buses. We're kind of in a rural area, but recruit from some sort of semi-rural areas as well. And so what we did was we worked with our primary schools as a cluster about probably 18 months ago now, maybe just nearly 2 years ago, to kind of get there. And they were really receptive to this. They were very keen to kind of do something about this. And they were very keen that we were sort of trying to, push this through, because they thought if we did it, it made their life so much easier to be able to say to their parents, actually, phones are banned at TPS anyway, don't go and give your child in year 4 a smartphone, because they won't be able to use it when they get to TPS as well. And we did a joint statement. So we put together a joint statement from all of our, so I've got 7, primary feeder schools, and they, it was quite, I think it was quite powerful. We were quite punchy with some of the information, some of the stats that Louise shared there as well, that kind of thing. We were quite, this is what we want to avoid. And they agreed to go smartphone free as well, with the idea that we would then sort of phase this in at TPS as well. What we've done, our actual policy, is we're brick phone only for year 7 and year 8, and then a daily collection system for year 9, 10 and 11 currently. And that's kind of a hybrid model that has led to some issues, because some of the younger ones are sort of looking enviously at the older ones, thinking, oh, they get to keep their smartphone. But our plan is very much that we will roll it through now that we've kind of broken the back of the problems there. In terms of our communication, we did lots of sort of over communicating with our community. I sent several letters, very similar to Tony. I didn't do a consultation. I didn't sort of say, do you want this or not? I said, these things are so significant, and the problems are so significant that, of course, I know you wouldn't want them. So we are going to do what we can do to avoid that. And we just based it around 3 main areas: safeguarding, mental health, and distractions. And in each of those areas, there's obviously so much evidence now accruing that it became really difficult for any parent to kind of, disagree. And in fact, I've never had a parent say to me, I want my child to have social media, I want my child to have a smartphone. It has all been around I want tracking, I want, the bus pass, or whatever it might be. And we can talk about that maybe in a minute. In terms of the impact, very similar to Leanne, I'm really happy about this, and I think it will grow and grow. Currently, a third of our year 7s don't own a smartphone at all, compared to, unfortunately, 98% of our year 8s do own a smartphone, because the way it was brought in, obviously, they'd all got their smartphones in year 6 and they got them in year 7 by the time they got here. And I just really want to see that number grow and grow and grow, because I think it gives parents the permission to say, it's not my fault as a parent. It's that, evil head teacher who's, not going to let you have that, and you just can't do it, because they're not allowed at the Petersfield schools. So there's no point in you having one. And I think that when we get to that kind of 50%, I think that will be a real milestone, actually, because then the majority of students won't be coming to school with a smartphone. The biggest sort of immediate sort of impact we've seen is a real decline in these really big WhatsApp groups that were really, really unpleasant, actually. And I think they were set up mostly at primary level, and then they came here. Older siblings got invited into them. Other people got invited into them. I don't want to say touch wood now, but we've sort of seen them almost completely disappear. That has not been a feature of our year 7 cohort, whereas it had been for the previous 4 or 5 years of us having to email parents, say, please don't let your child join really big WhatsApp groups with people you don't know who they are. So that has been really positive. When it comes to brick phones, we've specified 3, and a shout out. I think Carl Jonathan from Swanmore School is on this call as well. But very thank you to you, Carl. I think you did the research on this, and we just pinched the 3 phones that you'd suggested. That seemed really good. They're very basic. Our kind of phone of choice is the Nokia 105, the 2G one. Very straightforward. It's got Snake, got all sorts of great stuff, but much less distracting than smartphone. And I think one of our biggest wins, if you like, thinking about what the others have said, is that we have actually bought kind of a bank of those, because they're very cheap. They're sort of £15. So we've got a bank of them here in school. So the second a parent says, my child's going home on the bus, it's going to be your fault, Mr. Rand, if there's, they can't track them, they can't call me, I'm working late, whatever it might be. We do just give them a smart, a brick phone, a Nokia 105, just to say, right, that's fine, but until you get yourself a Nokia, here's one from us. And we have offered to buy any family that's having hardship, we've offered to buy a brick phone as well. So it just removes any of those sort of barriers, or you're adding extra costs and all this kind of thing. We just try to remove as many of those. And as soon as you say that, the parents, they don't have anywhere to go on it, really, because the child can ring, the child can text the parent, and that really helps, we've found. So yeah, so that's where we are, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I think that's genius. Yeah, just buying Nokias and giving them out. I think, yeah, it's about removing those blockers, which often they are. There's always a solution to these problems. So thank you. We will open for questions in a second, but I'd love to just get from all of you just a quick fire. What was your biggest hurdle, and how did you overcome it? And what was the other one I was going to ask? Yeah, what's your kind of your number one tip for success? So really quick fire, just kind of, just a couple of sentences on each. Mark, since I've got you, I'll start with you. Biggest hurdle and most important tip for success.
Yeah, so the biggest hurdle, we were really worried actually about kind of the bus companies or the train companies saying, oh, you can only get it on a smart app and they've got to have one, because we did sort of think that might be a bit of a showstopper in a certain, I couldn't say, oh, tough. Yeah. So what we've actually been able to do is work with them and, spoke to them and try and get guarantees that they will never go completely to just only an app. They do still do ones that you can print. And it's it's a bit less convenient. The children might forget that. There's all those sorts of things. But let's be clear, we've coped with bus passes, haven't we, for 100 years or whatever, for a long time. So it is very possible that a child can print off that QR code, show it to the bus driver, and so that became less of an issue when we got to it, which was really helpful. I think the tracking thing, that will come up. AirTags seem quite effective. And bluntly, even if they're not as effective, maybe as a smartphone, I think it's just that little bit of peace of mind for some of those parents who are very concerned about that it will put an AirTag in their bag and then you can track and hopefully they won't. I think there is a real tension with me as a head teacher telling a parent you're probably being a bit oversensitive, you don't need to worry about you have to do that very carefully, I think. But I think having that technical solution to it is really helpful.
Lovely. Thank you, Mark. Leanne, we'll ask you the same question. So biggest hurdle that you had to overcome, and a tip for success would be great. Thank you.
So I think our biggest hurdle was that nobody would come with me. So I'd asked our primary feed. I'm hoping that my other colleagues in the New Forest aren't on the call. If they are on the call, my primary feeders wouldn't come with me because they couldn't perceive that there was an issue. And colleagues in the New Forest just wanted to sort of wait and see what happened. So I kind of had to go it alone, and I would rather have gone with friends, to be honest. So you have to be sort of extra brave. But the pressure from the parents who were really supportive, and that pressure downwards to primary school colleagues, and the desire for the conversation about what are the dangers, what is going on, actually that just got its own momentum. So that was all right in the end. But it could have gone sort of very differently. Obviously, the tracking issue is the issue that comes up for us more regularly than anything else. And even parents who say, well, I work late, I don't trust my child. I mean, I don't trust my child, and I like to track them whilst I'm at work to check they've not gone off out and about and here and there. And, there's a whole raft of stuff to unpick there, isn't there? But it's just helping them to solve their immediate practical issues, and then trying to sort of find some other support. Greatest tip, I think, is to, as Mark says, over communicate. And also, we have so much data. This is so powerful. All of the information that we've got, you cannot look at that amount of information and just think, oh, it's not really an issue, is it? So I think for me, I push as much as I can, really strong information, the type of information that Louise has kindly shared with us, because it's very, very convincing, and you can bring people around very quickly using that information.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you for that, Leanne. And finally, Toby, same question, please.
I just think the biggest barrier, which I think for us is an ongoing one, really, is the rub between the younger students. It's becoming more the norm, but some of them, their older siblings have got smartphones, have always had a smartphone, and within a family, it does causes some tension. So it's not really our issue, but it's one that we need to be conscious of and support parents. And I think that links to probably the top tip, which the other two guys have said, is about the clarity of communication, and keep using every opportunity to communicate the sense of purpose and the why we are doing it. If you keep coming back to the why, you can't argue it. As Leanne just said, there isn't a parent that would sit down and say, yeah, whatever you've just said to me, I still think smartphones are a really great idea and I want my child to have one. So I think that over communication and the clarity about it, and just making sure that you communicate to parents, this is really, really important to us as a school. And, I have, in my year 6 parents induction evening, actually said to parents, you are doing your children a disservice by buying them a smartphone at the moment, and kind of being as direct as that, but backing it up with the evidence and saying this is why, and this is what we see. And at that point, those that have already got children in the school higher up that have had smartphones, I see a lot of nodding heads, because they've seen the issues that their children have had over the last few years. We're saying your next child through doesn't need a smartphone, shouldn't have one, and they're actually feeling, they're feeling the rub between the family, intra-family pressure, because they've got siblings that will have smartphones and some that won't. But they thoroughly agree that I don't want my next child to go through what my elder children have gone through. So using all those great opportunities to really hammer home the message, and not assume that we can back off from the communication for 6 months because we think we've got our message. Use every opportunity, every newsletter, to have a little bit in there as well. And every time a new resource comes through, which is very much, they're very often very well evidence-based, push that out to parents as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Toby.
Okay.
So great advice from all of you. And as many of you will know, last summer we coordinated all the primary schools, or lots of the primary schools, about 150 of them across Hampshire, to go smartphone free, which meant that children can't bring a smartphone to school at primary level. So the hope is there will be children coming through to from year 6 who don't have smartphones. But of course, that transition to secondary is always the issue. Leanne, you said you would have much preferred having friends to do it with you, and we've heard that a lot from head teachers. So we're interested to know what's the feeling from everyone on the call. So this is not about getting a commitment from you, it's about kind of understanding your thoughts. So I just wanted to launch a poll for you, and just really up for very kind of open, honest answers here. Would you be interested in committing to banning smartphones if other schools did the same? Would you be more interested to ban phones if other people did it, or would you be motivated to on your own? And if not, what are the blockers? What are the things that you're noticing? Is it the things that we've heard today on the call, or is it other ones? So just interested in your thoughts. Thank you. Can everyone see that poll? Great. Thanks very much. Okay. Just give you a minute or two more to do that. And while people are voting, feel free to ask questions now to the panel. There was one question from Josh in the chat, I think was for you, Mark. What are the 3 phones that you suggest? So I think you had the Nokia 105. Did you say there were 2 other models that you use?
Yeah. And like I say, credit to Carl and her friends at Swanmore for identifying these and trawling Amazon those out. But yeah, it was the Nokia 105 is kind of what most straightforward, most widely available. Got to be a little bit careful about the Nokia. There is a 4G version as well. So you just got to check you get the kind of 2G, version that literally can't go on the internet. The other one we've said, and it's a little bit more than recommend, we've sort of said these are the 3 allowable brick phones. So we've been fairly prescriptive. To be honest, we've not got to the point where we've been challenged on that. If a child brought in one that was clearly a brick phone, we probably would be okay with that, because it still serves the same purpose. So the Oak Castle F101. That's £18, 7+ day battery life. Imagine that. And the Yuxing F200 flip phone. So a little bit of choice for them there. A little bit more expensive there at £26. So yeah, they've got a little bit of choice there, which ones they want to go with. There is another phone that's just come out on the market called the Explorer One that looks a little bit more like a smartphone. It's kind of like a squat smartphone, but is completely locked down. And we have just had one of our year 6 parents who's going to be coming up into year 7 ask us if that phone was acceptable. So we're just looking at it. I'm a little bit nervous about it because as soon as you get gradations of is it a smartphone, is it not a smartphone, you get kids trying to prove if it can go on the internet or not. It gets a bit muddy, whereas the brick phones are so obvious.
Yeah. But
we're going to look at it and see what we think.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much, and thank you for voting. So actually, almost everybody, would do it if everyone acted together. So 94%. 73% would prefer to take collective action. So that's really useful for us. And, we coordinated it with the primaries, and we're very happy to just, kind of be the admin people behind collecting all the names and creating a letter if there was appetite for that. I know it's different at secondary level, but we do just hear again and again how much easier it is if everyone does it together. So we'll be in touch after the call to see if there's appetite for people adding names to a letter. Thank you so much for that. Any questions? Do people want to just put hands up or on mic if you have specific questions for the panel or anything you'd like to add?
Not so much a question, but from Hounsdown School, a very similar journey to a lot of the other schools. We're committed to bricks from 2026 and have started sharing that already with parents. And we've always had, we've been no mobile phones on possession since 2024 September. And there was always that concern of support from parents, but actually our parents have been incredibly supportive and incredibly thankful for us making that decision on their behalf, so that we can't do this because the schools are not allowing you to have them, has been incredibly powerful. And actually at our year 6 open evenings, we had parents discussing amongst themselves how they could manage not to have smartphones and not to track their children without our input. So it is becoming an incredibly powerful movement with our parents, which is kind of self-supporting.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much. So I don't know where my camera's gone. I seem to have lost my camera capacity. But do we have other questions reflections that people want to make? While we do, I'll just share the results as well. So we got 88% wanting to commit to banning phones if others do the same, which is really interesting. And 75% prefer to take collective action. It's really, really useful for us. Thank you. Any other questions?
Claire, just to that point about support or otherwise, I did just see a totally fascinating thing pop up on our year 7 Facebook parent forum. It's a Facebook parent forum that we don't actually control. It's not an official school forum, and it was a really, really interesting question actually that I thought could well be worth just sharing as we've got a minute. But it was just such an interesting one here. Just wondering how many parents take their smartphone to school. Really appreciate some feedback. My child's telling me that this is a year 7 TPS parent. How true it actually is that all the other kids are just bringing them in and leaving it in the bag. And obviously this was a bit of an interesting moment for us because, people all piled on this and we thought, oh God, are they all going to just sort of say, oh, they're bringing them in? But the responses were absolutely, were wonderful, really, really, really warmed my heart actually, with all the parents just basically saying, no, my child only brings in a brick phone, which was just a really, lovely thing to sort of see from that 18. So I think even if there's that perception from some of the kids, oh yeah, the kids are sneaking them in and things like that, and I will sort of share this, with the families. And it just went on and saying, brick phone, got an air tag, etc. So I just thought that was quite a nice thing. This was only last week, so halfway through the year when they actually did that, because obviously that could potentially have gone either way, couldn't it? With a question like that on an open forum, and we could have had everyone say, "Oh yeah, my child just ignores the rules and brings a smartphone." Yeah. So I think the parents will I think most parents do definitely want this.
Yeah.
I do believe that now. The vast majority really do want this and want to support it.
Absolutely. I think we're just in a bit of a vicious circle here. We're in a collective action problem, and it really is just having that coordination to kind of bring it together and everyone acting together. So yeah, it's really useful to hear thoughts on the call. Thank you so much. In terms of next steps, I don't know if people can see that. We're very happy to kind of do the admin behind it to just, bring people together. We've written a draft letter, which we will share again with you. And we're very happy to take names and coordinate that as we did with the primaries, just to make it easier for all of you. Obviously, time is precious in terms of getting things in for September. One of you talked about actually staggering it a term later for some of the years, which is really interesting, because I think people think just in terms of years, but we still do have time for September. So we've got lots on the Generation Focus website. We've got our head teacher toolkit, which takes you through all the steps, and we've kind of walked the walk with a lot of head teachers on this now, so hopefully it's really helpful. But we will be in touch, and please do let us know if you would add your name to a letter for September, so that we just get that collective action, safety in numbers thing, just to make it easier for you.